Hey, everybody. My name is Jeremy Francesi. Welcome to First Floor Conversations. Today on episode 73, we're joined by Jesse Mauck. Jesse currently runs multiple ventures that all tie back to Zigr, your holding company, right? Everything from M&A, buy-side acquisitions, speak about finance, everything from blockchain and the investment side of things. It seems like you speak on different panels about a variety of different topics. And so today, what we're going to break down really is everything from the M&A side, the state of the markets, how we're valuing companies, how we're finding fits, finding opportunity and value in places I don't think a lot of people are looking at in the traditional markets, as well as discuss, look, you didn't have the easiest of upbringing. So I want to give some context for those that are listening, how you can make the most out of your situation, take control of things and put yourself in a position to find success and bring it to life because of decisions you made, having strong self-awareness, getting information and getting positioned to go win, so to speak. Jesse, welcome to the show. How are you? What kind of day are we having today?
Oh, we're having a phenomenal day. Thank
Good.
you for inviting me to go on the podcast, Jeremy. Appreciate it.
Of course. And hey, listen, for those tuning in video, what's going on audio, thanks for swinging by. Hey, I want to give a little context for how, look, I reached out to Jesse to see if he could jump on. I saw a lot of good content coming from LinkedIn, but, in the finance space, in the PE space, in the M&A space, I find a lot of the content that comes out is more oriented on the just deal. And it's less about the process. It's less looking under the hood, and it's less talking about the ways business gets done, right? A lot of it isn't just about the numbers. It's about having a strong process for professionally making decisions, acquiring and finding opportunity. And Jesse, we talked before this, but I mean, look, if you're listening to this show, the goal is to find ways where you can have a strong foundation and really about sustainability, right?
Right.
95% of companies go out of business in the first 5 years. Of those that make it past the 5-year mark, 99% don't make it 10 years. So when we look about the tenets of fundamentals of business, you can have a great deal and you can have a great investment, but one deal is, for the most part, isn't going to change it all. You have to find a way to consistently develop a muscle for identifying opportunity, bringing together people and stringing together a series of investments where parties can win and it's sustainable, duplicatable, and something that you can do over and over again. And in your case, obviously it wraps up in your holding company where you have a bunch of different things internationally. But look, that's really the basis of this. So look, before we dive into some of the really nuts and bolts of things, Jesse, get us up to speed a little bit on like where you're at today, like where's home, where you're at, kind of what the focus is on a day-to-day basis, and then I'll kind of walk us through from there.
Yeah. So I currently run a buy-side M&A firm. What we're focused on is real estate and construction. So we're industry specific. We actually go out there, identify opportunities based on kind of the track record of the companies, where the growth expansion can be, and then also all the parties involved. So we're not like a private equity firm. We're more of kind of an incubator or accelerator that helps entrepreneurs buy companies. So I'm located in California, but we have deals in Michigan, Alabama, and in Florida. So we're not like focused on specifically a state. We're looking more for, established companies that are going to go and grow, that we could turn into like $20 to $50 million companies over the next 5 years. My background, I don't know if you wanted me to touch base on that, but so I worked 5 years in construction. Before that, I was kind of lost. I grew up in the foster care system, not the best upbringing. I was in York, Pennsylvania, which is, pretty hood right now, even if you go back and look at it from the time to now where it is right now. So I was working in construction, not the best characters, not the best role models in my 20s. So the mindset is completely different of where I am in now to where I was when I was younger. Working in construction, I was taught a lot of different ways, like to build businesses, or not businesses, but to build properties and things like that. So I worked commercial, residential, union, non-union. I had somebody that worked with me that I wish I could have worked with in the future. But at that time, I didn't know, exactly what I was going to do. I got out of construction, went into real estate. I was a property assessor. I was able to bid on properties as far as like the repairs go, take pictures, submit those bids. And then eventually I got out of that and worked in venture. So Zigr first started off as more of like a digital marketing agency, completely different skill set than when I was first, looking at starting my own business. Because, I had the construction background, I had real estate background, but then, it wasn't exciting. There was nothing, sexy about it. So when I got into digital marketing, it was fun. I got to learn code. So I didn't really technically go to school for like computer science or anything like that. I actually, read books. I went on YouTube. I might have taken a few classes, but I haven't really, gone out, got a bachelor's or master's degree in it. More of the education was self-education, self-taught, and then actually in the field, like doing the actual work. I partnered with a guy that he was a professor at Cal Poly. So we end up getting interns. We end up, working on projects. I was in West Covina. There's like a skyrise. So we had a lot of clients. We had law firms, health professionals, like healthcare agencies and things like that we would build the software for. We started landing contracts for like venture capital startups, growing those. So when I transitioned from kind of working in venture and startups to M&A, it made a lot of sense. So I kind of went back to the drawing board. I looked at where my skill sets, the life experience that I've had, and then I established a way to where I could implement that into the companies that I work. So some of the advice I could give people is that if you're looking at like buying a company, don't look at it, solely based on numbers. Like you said, you're going to be looking at it as far as what you bring to the table and then your connections that you have, and then evaluate deals on where you think the opportunity is. So you're looking at companies that potentially they haven't updated their website. They haven't, really ran the business correctly. There's no management. There's no, a dedicated sales team. You're looking at how much is the company currently worth based on the way it runs, and then how much can it be worth, and then how much is it going to cost to bridge that gap, and you kind of subtract that from the valuation. Right. So that's how we look at deals. We've developed a network of people to help us. So on my team, I have an attorney, I have an operations expert, I have advisors that have already worked in those industries that, if they've already ran a construction company. We bought Fleming Roofing in Alabama, and the partner that I have on that deal, he owns Equinox Roofing in California. So he's already a GC. He's already done roofing. So now I'm buying companies that I know what his numbers are on current deals, and then we're applying that, all the systems, operations, and finance to those deals that we see.
Got it. So let's frame this, right? So you hit on it briefly, but I kind of want to isolate it for a minute for people paying attention, video, audio wise. Like, you're not a traditional PE firm, right? So walk us through the distinction between a traditional PE firm and how you operate, and from a standpoint of like what a business offers and how it operates are obviously different things, right? Both can find a way to preserve capital and grow, provide returns, but how you do it is very different. Can you just walk us through the basics of what a traditional PE structure is and kind of how you guys are a little bit different?
Yeah. So a private equity firm, they typically structure a fund. The fund could be oriented towards, say, real estate or, M&A or just consolidation plays. Like in healthcare, you see a lot of this where they'll buy a platform to build on. So they'll buy the company, they'll go out and hire executives, for the C-suite, or they'll try to recruit within that company that they buy. So you're not really seeing private equity firms give entrepreneurs the chance at ownership of owning a business. And they're not really going to give like the current employees ownership of that business either. Their goal is to own as much equity in that company and to use as much little capital as possible to buy that business. So they're buying a lot of distressed businesses. And then the way that they get those funds is coming from accredited investors. So they're going to have like a Reg D 506C or a crowd fund or some type of fund structure that they get the capital from. And then they're allocating that into the businesses or the real estate that they buy. So there's a factor of it is there's a dilution of the actual capital stack. So you might have like a pref equity structure to where the private equity firm has like an asset management fee or has some type of water flow that goes to them from the distributions, and then the investors get paid last. The problem with this is that the investors don't capitalize on the exits that private equity firms make when they sell these companies. So the difference between their model and our model is that we give investors and entrepreneurs direct equity stake in those businesses, and they actually actively make the decisions on where that business goes. So they not only get the cash flow from that business, but they also get to capitalize on the exit. So their equity portion in that business could be like 10x, versus in private equity, they're only getting like a 20% investment rate of return.
I'm happy you hit that, right? So it's the difference between a rate of return and a multiple, right?
Right,
so,
right.
Right. So getting a return is not equal across all boards. Now, they're also, I think what's important is a vehicle is a vehicle, right? There are
Right.
both ways to deploy capital. And for the traditional PE structure, sometimes those accredited investors do not want anything to do with the decision-making in that company. And they want to put capital in and get their quarterly. Yeah, they're passive, right?
Right.
On your side, in many ways, and what we're going to touch on is the network effect and what you've been able to capture. I mean, you have, it's honestly one of the coolest jobs I've ever seen, if I can just call it what it is, right? Like you basically get to find, obviously you have it's your area of expertise, but you're finding as an extension of your network ways to deploy their capital, get involved in the deal, but put it together where your expertise, your ability to make great and sound judgment is able to find value where people aren't looking,
Yep.
which is so valuable for a business owner like that GC of Equinox Roofing, who maybe doesn't have the time to go find other deals because they're running their company.
That's exactly the situation. Yeah, that's right? How we find each other. Yeah.
Right. So in many senses, they're outsourcing their lens and their judgment to you to deploy capital outside of the company to diversify, because they can keep growing, but it makes more sense to just deploy it and buy something. Right. And maybe that's how they grow into a national presence. But it really comes down to, I always say if you're in an advisory type of role, like they're paying you because they know you, they trust you, and they believe they can depend on you to know something they may not know, right? And so on the side of that, it's you help buy back time and then some, right? And then you have skin in the game, which I think is also another thing we'll talk about, which is you're not putting your skin in the day, you're not putting your money in the deal unless you think it's worth it, or your time in it if you don't think it's worth it, because of how you make your money. So you are sitting side by side with your clients in that way. But so let's frame up the conversation here. And then I do want to step back, because in your humble introduction of yourself, like you glanced over the fact that you grew up in foster care and group homes. Like I think it also is the name of the company based off of Zig Ziglar?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Love it. So look, in many, I mean, and I saw, we do some research, right? Like, you clearly are a product of great self-awareness and of going and figuring out how to make things work for you, right? Maybe traditional class environments don't work for you, but watching somebody do it, tapping something, working with your hands and doing it a different way. And I think that's really important to one of the things you touched on, which is, early years, 18, 19, 20, 21, it's really easy to get lost, where you're looking around and you're kind of seeing a world pass you by and you're looking around like, how the hell do I fit into this? What am I doing? Right? You're almost looking for a sense of belonging and a sense of purpose at the same time, but belonging and purpose are almost entirely separate, right? And so I want to step back a little bit, actually, and just get straight to it. Where walk us through before this version of Jesse. Like, were you always business minded? Like, were you a lemonade stand, garage sale, tag sale, flip it kind of a kid, or were you, what was 17, 18, 19-year-old Jesse, like, where was his head at? What was going on?
Yeah. So when I came to California, because I grew up, most of my childhood was on the East Coast. So I grew up really rough. It was an all Black community. So I was kind of like the redheaded stepchild that didn't belong, that got picked on. I was scrawny. So I was actually like premature born. So I was kind of tiny when I was a kid. I was like this little guy. So I got picked on a lot. Now I, lift weights, I'm active, healthy. But during that time I was not. So when I finally came over here, California schools are different. I don't know if you've noticed, on the East Coast, they're more inside, like all in one building. In California, you have kind of things spread out in little sections. So when I was looking around, I didn't have my own group. A lot of these kids, they grew up, they had, their friends that were on the block. So I couldn't find my group. I was more of like this outcast I think I've always been given intelligence. I just didn't know at that time how to apply it. So, in high school, I would go to the chess club. When I finally went to like community college, I went to Mount Sac. I started looking at business, from that side. I went for associates in international business, ended up dropping out. I didn't have like the dedication, really to put the hard work in, right, to get a degree. I was like, this is going too slow. I want to do something with my life. That's why I went to construction, is because during that time, the trade was paying good. There was good benefits. Eventually I got like a company truck. So when I compared myself to like some of my friends, I was more ahead of the curve. I was making more money than them. They were going to school, acquiring a bunch of debt. They were lost themselves. So a lot of people, when they go to college, what's the first thing you do when you go to college? You party, right? So during that time, I didn't have the best influence of friends that I did make. I wouldn't even, to this day, I think I only talked to one out of everybody that, out of my whole entire high school, out of my college, I only talked to one friend. I had a friend that overdosed. I had another guy, he would take like benzos. So his whole personality, he has like schizophrenia and stuff. I have another friend, he works in a warehouse. That's all he does. But those people I don't even talk to anymore. The relationships I have now, I've gained through building value in myself. So I've read books, I've done deals, I've gone to networking events, had really interesting conversations like with you, Jeremy, and that's led me to personal development. And then I've developed a better version of myself that then attracts people that are in situations that I want to get into or currently going through the same game plan that I am, like the wealth creation, learning assets versus liabilities, having conversations about building, a better standard of living. So.
Right. It's funny you say, I think when I originally messaged you, I was in Florida working remote, and I was with a couple of buddies, and we were kind of just talking about. This is going to sound ridiculous, but I think do you have siblings? Like, I mean, it sounds like you grew up an only child and you bounced around foster.
So I have
like
cousins
okay.
that I considered like my brothers. Yeah.
Right. The reason I ask is, this is going to sound crazy, and to those listening that know me, you'll know it's well intentioned, but somebody has to make a decision in your family to permanently change things for the rest of the family.
Right.
And
yeah.
it's a values structure. What does it mean to be a part of your family, right? I hate saying organization, but it's like, what is your team? What is that family? How do
your
you
immediate circle? What does
right
it
and
mean to be in your first circle?
right, like, and obviously you're from Zig Ziglar to Jim Rohn, and being the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. For me, and one of the things I even share with my team is like, for a long time I looked at my center of influence was, I had friends, I was in a fraternity, I enjoyed myself, but the people that, if I looked at my average 5, like 2 or 3 of them were online. There were YouTube videos, there were people I followed that
Yep.
I spent hours, because when the world got quiet, I plugged in. And that was when that kind of clicked. And I'm like, man, you start to feel a little bit alone in a crowded room of people. Right. Yeah. And you're like, and then you go from being like, this is uncomfortable. I don't know. I'm sure you know what I mean by that, where you're like, this is like, even though maybe you're with people, you're like, I definitely don't belong in this room, or something's off. And then there's a transition where you're like, I'm good. And you feel like you're in a little more control. For you, a lot of how you speak comes from, you clearly have a very strong sense of self-awareness to looking around. Like, I'm not around here. I know York County, right? Like, I dated somebody that actually went to York Catholic, and from that, and like, I know the area a little bit. Like, you've been somebody that it seems like has had to look at a situation, develop a strong observation muscle of who's in the room, what's happening, how do I fit into that equation. And one of the things I love about business and entrepreneurship, and whatever you want to call it, whether, and I think it might be Jim Rohn, but they talk about business and sales. It's a personal development plan directly attached to a compensation plan. The only way you make more money and do more is if you become a better quality person and help more people. Right. And so what I want to talk to you about a little bit is deeper into that idea of feeling lost, and that feeling of like, kind of like fuck mental health. Like, you're not even in a state of any sense of being holistic. When you're 18, 19, 20, even maybe deeper into your 20s, Jesse, like, walk us through it. Like, kind of walk me through a little bit. Like, Were there moments where you realized the change needed to be made? Was it a hit rock bottom mentality, or was it a gradual progression of this isn't like what I want, this is something I need to do better? What was that progression, and what were the indicators of it's time I take a little bit more control and figure this shit out for myself?
Right. Yeah. So what you touched on was a lot of what happens. So you can either learn from other people's mistakes, or you can make the mistakes and learn, or you can continually make the mistakes and keep making mistakes and never change. So insanity is doing the same thing over and over and again and expecting a different result. So you have to look at your own life. I think in my 20s, I was a heavy drinker trying to drown my sorrows, dealing with my mom's death early on. I never dealt with it. I kind of just put it in a box, put it aside, dealing with the issues of like not belonging into society, having the friends, the support groups that I saw other people having, figuring out that the way that I was looking at life was different. I think it was the expectations I had high expectations for myself, but then I was not putting the actual results in to get there. So I had this victim mentality, like, like growing up, how I was the only way that I'm going to get somewhere, and like it's everybody else's fault. So the main thing I had to look at was myself in the mirror. Like you have to look in the mirror and know that you're accountable for your own actions and what you do. Everybody is, no matter your situation, you all have the same 24 hours in a day. You all have access to technology, Facebook, LinkedIn. You have all these resources that are out there, YouTube, to learn. You can learn a skill set that will get you somewhere that's going to be better than where you are right now. I think a lot of people, they lack that perspective, right? Like they think that I'm stuck, I'm here, this is permanently where I'm going to be, but they don't look at time. Like you have, 60 years of your life, 80 years of your life when you're in your 20s. So you could do anything that you want to do if you just start doing it. So that's what Zig Ziglar said, you don't have to be great at something to start, but you have to start to become great. So that was something that hit me, is in my 20s, I had to start on that process, no matter what, that I was going to go out, even if I couldn't watch TV, even if I couldn't hang out with people, even if my family at the time was telling me like, you're crazy trying to be an entrepreneur. Those are the people that are supposed to support you, but they could be the people that beat you down the most. Emotionally, it's a rocky ride. Like when you start a business, it's very hard. That's why we buy established businesses now, because all those people that work in the business, they help you. They're along for the journey. Like you have a structure that's in place. Whereas, startups, every founder deals with, bad situations. A lot of people go through relationships, right? Like you have a husband and a wife, one is making more money than the other. One starts a business and is working from home, where the wife is going to work. That might not work because they think that the person's just sitting at home. But, the delayed gratification is another aspect of it. And that's the hardest in your 20s, because you want to make money fast. You want to have a different lifestyle. But some of the most success that you're going to have is delayed gratification for 6 months, a year, 2 years. You don't see the payout until the end of 2 years. You might get money, but the actual development of yourself is at that end of that 2-year mark.
100%. Yeah, I always think about most things fall back on, do you actually have a clear understanding of how you acquire information, retain it, and develop perspective with that information? Like, do you know how you learn, right? So, back to being stuck, it's like, I think a lot of times people are like, well, if I study this or learn this or go down that rabbit hole and then I don't like it, then I wasted time. No. Reading is a muscle. Learning is a muscle. Being able to approach that, I was talking with a buddy of mine who's works in McKinsey, and he is one of the smartest people I've ever spoken to, like from a technical business understanding, but that's his job. He's a professional problem solver. His job is to look at a situation, figure out how to get people, process, and systems to work cohesively, sustainably. So whatever it is. And so yeah, no, and then that's kind of where I was drawing parallels, like the ability to enter a scenario that's not familiar and find a way to be familiar with the situation is everything. So if you learn something, like I saw you got it look like a certificate from MIT on blockchain. Like you might
Yeah,
not be buying anything with blockchain, but doing the certificate, acquiring the information, it's not a waste because you're working the muscle, you're getting insights. Obviously, blockchain technology is a whole other conversation that matters, right? And so,
I
but
did that for a client. So I had a
really,
client that paid me while we were working with their startup, raising them capital. And then I was like, hey, I need to become more educated in this to do my job.
right?
Right. So that's why I went out and
I
got that
love that.
certificate. And then I also had to understand it from a patent side. So I went and took the little course that they have with the US TPO so
Yep.
that you're able to go and patent the actual technology because that's where the money is in blockchain. You have
Right.
Microsoft, Google, all those companies that all have patents before they actually come out with the product.
Yep. It's it's one of those things that it always comes back to the fundamentals, right?
Yeah.
Always back to the fundamentals. So look, I want to touch on a couple things. One, if we look at Jesse, we look at you like a lone wolf a little bit, right? Like, at this point, you've kind of built yourself a pack and you've built yourself a sense of community, a sense of belonging and support professionally, right? I often think most of the people I spend time with now were people I did not know 2 years ago, right? 3 years ago. Like if I think about like who I spend time with on a daily basis, most of them were not people in my ecosystem half at
Right.
5 years ago. And for me, I look at that as like good, but on your end, I think a lot of people question like, how do you go into a room and build relationships? How do you go figure out how to meet people? For me, I learned more on my podcast than I did in college because of this exact conversation of Jesse, talk to me about how you've approached this, analyzed this, made that decision, justified that business case. How did you work that problem out? That's how I learn. I need to case study that shit in my head and play it out. Right. A lot of it's not even game theory. It's just, I need to see it. A lot of this, like I was explaining like the best teacher is the one that made it real, not the one that knew the material. Right. For you, how did you go about building that process as somebody that probably lacked a little bit of confidence, probably weren't sure of yourself in the early days, but how did you go about moving forward and building network and relations with people that weren't friends of friends? They weren't the layup introduction of, yeah,
Right.
they're a new contact, but like, now they have no idea who you are. Maybe it's a networking event and you're going solo and you're like, how do I go up and shake people's hands? Like, I'd love some insight on how you brought yourself into a position where you could do that confidently. Because I think a lot of people struggle with sometimes that simple part of the entire world is in the hand of a stranger.
Right. So, it starts with self-esteem and confidence, right? Like you got to have confidence. One of the first events that I did was for ideas like International Data and Science Association, part of Cal Poly. I went up there in front of 4,000 people and spoke about blockchain without a computer science degree, but all these other guys have bachelor's and masters. You look at the way it's applied. So the perspective that you're coming from is why you're going to get paid. Because there's people that look at it, I call it academia versus enterprise. So when you look at enterprises, how do you apply a specific topic in, say, the whole world, like how, on a macro scale, then a micro scale, and then break it down to what is needed from each party to actually make that operate. So I apply this strategy to M&A. That's how we come up with an investment thesis. There's a way that, we actually build out relationships through that process, through evaluating things through a different perspective. The confidence and the self-esteem is you gotta, like I said, you gotta look yourself in the mirror and you could say, hey, what's worse, going out there and talking to 100 people or going through life meeting 100 people and not, equivalating to anything that you're going to become. So you got to look at it like there's no risk. There's no risk for you to go out and become successful, but there is a risk keeping the status quo, this mundane lifestyle, because you'll never know. You'll never know what's on the other side, right? The grass is greener on the other side. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, they're not willing to go through those first like 2-3 years grinding hard, right? Like a lot of them don't make it. Not everybody's cut out to be an entrepreneur, but I think that, it's in everybody if they wanted to seek it. Like you have to seek it in yourself, build that confidence, then go out there and then start connecting with people. The networking events, they allow you to build that relationship. They have this thing in real estate, know, build, trust. First, someone has to know you, know who you are, know what you're about. Then you're going to build that relationship with them. You talk about the conversation, you talk about, what they're currently doing, what you're doing, and eventually they're going to trust you, depending on like your track record. So if you see that for the last 3 years, 4 years, I've been growing, I've been doing the same thing, I've been getting more specialized, you know that this is somebody I'm going to want to go to because,
Right.
of the content. For example, the content. A lot of people will put out content online, but then they stop. All of a sudden, a month in, they'll stop. They're like, oh, I'm not making any money. That's not how it works. The delayed gratification. So you got to keep every day, going to it, keep going to events. Even if you go to one event, doesn't work. Okay,
Right.
keep going, go to the next one, eventually be a speaker. I was a venture capital judge for startup.network. It was run by
That's
a
cool.
bunch of like Ukraine incubators coming on the tech side, helping startups grow on the tech side. But what I saw was every time I went to these, I saw the same people coming. One of them was this guy Keith Herman. He owned a $500 million fund, and I got to shake hands with this guy. I got to have conversations with this guy for free. So I went to this event as a speaker, and he was like the sole guy I wanted to go and talk to because every time I had a conversation with him, he gave me a different way of thinking about different types of deals and industries.
Yeah.
So
There's
I really appreciated it. Like the opportunity was there, man.
100%. There's two things that we've been talking a lot more about, especially since COVID shifted a lot of it, where the event space changed forever. Right now, it's coming
Yeah.
back, but there's trade shows and events are very expensive. You as
Yeah.
an individual contributor running around meeting people is a little different. But a lot of companies are spending a ton of money to be visible. And one thing we talk a lot about is owned PR and earned PR. Owned is in 1 in 8 users on LinkedIn is senior upper level management. 45% of the people reading articles on LinkedIn are leadership and upper management, right?
Right.
If you look at Facebook, and we just talked about this on a previous episode, but Facebook and LinkedIn are at Facebook 2011, we talked a little bit about this. Facebook 2011 is LinkedIn today. They both have about 750 million active monthly users. They both have 40 to 50% active engagement where users are coming in, whenever out of every 2 users plugging in every day on the app, right? The difference and the core difference from a social standpoint, kind of where I'll pull this together is like people were posting every day on Facebook. They're not 39% of LinkedIn users don't post ever. So when you think about the trade show effect and being visible, shaking hands, it's like start a podcast. If you could speak in front of 20 people that gave a shit about private equity, that's a good use of time. So why not build a podcast, even if only 100 people listen to it for the first year? Because if it's 100 people that love buy-side acquisition or consulting or whatever it is your business is, like that's an owned channel. So if COVID changes the event space, you now can start the event. Now you have the equity to start the event because now they're like, oh, I know what, the conversation. You can bring the guests on. There's so much you can do. And then from that, they're like, oh, I really like Jesse's point of view. Jesse, we're doing a panel. Do you want to come be a part of it? That's earned, right?
That's
Where
what
people
happens.
start to, right. And so, but to that point, it comes down to knowing where to go, shake hands. I want to take the conversation a little bit in a different direction, getting a little bit more to reading the market, right? Because I think you have a really impressive way of looking at things. And I think like when we talk about, a lot of people, especially right now with Airbnb and how people are putting money in real estate, I feel like everybody is putting cash in deals and, trying, it's almost real estate arbitrage more than it is deal making in my mind. And it's not a bad thing. It's just different. And, right now in a lot of the actual, like you have a lot of great recommendations on LinkedIn where people are talking about like your ability to follow the market, right? How do you stay informed? How do you stay plugged in on like your sphere of expertise, like the things that aren't, right? I always joke around like investments, especially with our PE clients, where it's kind of like you're looking through to find the needle in the haystack. But first, you need to know what haystack to look through, where you're looking for the specific thing, but you have to be willing to see something better than that specific thing, or you're going to also miss out on opportunities, right? So it's a weird dynamic of find exactly what you're looking for and be open enough in your lens to see, oh, I wasn't expecting that, but that's a deal, right?
Right.
Jesse, walk me through a little bit of how you follow the market and stay plugged in while also running inside of the company where you're doing deals every day. Like, how do you stay informed?
So I have people that I work with. For example, there's 3 people on my team, like my immediate network, that are realtors. So a lot of people that like wholesale properties, they're not a fan of realtors. A lot of people that buy businesses, they're not a fan of brokers. But I build relationships with those people. And a lot of times they're boots on the ground, like actually in the cities, they're in a specific like type of area that they understand, they know that's growing or declining or wherever that market's going to go. For example, I got off the phone with a guy in New Mexico. A lot of people aren't talking about New Mexico on the real estate side. Like, hey, because everybody's talking about Florida, Texas, Arizona, Colorado, Utah, those states. But New Mexico has actually seen steady growth. There's certain cities in New Mexico that are doing a lot of like home remodeling. There's like higher income areas. So I stay plugged in. I plug in to different markets and then I get data that comes from them that's raw data. It's not data that's put into like a spreadsheet where some analyst is talking about something. No, it's like in real time data that some guy told me like 2 weeks ago or a week ago, and then I'm analyzing it based off of the research. So I'll get kind of like a lead of something, and then I'll follow up with my own research. And at that point, I'll make more of an informed or educated decision based on that. And then I'll even dive deeper, like what's causing it, right? So when a lot of people like they don't understand investment banking versus private equity. Investment banking is a lot of spreadsheets, analysts, people crunching numbers. But private equity is more of you're coming up with the reason of why you're going to buy a company in a specific market, a certain type of sector or type of business, and then how are you going to turn that business around, what you're going to apply to it, how much does the customer acquisition cost, the management, things like that. So when you look at wages, wages could be increasing in an area. You have real estate property values increasing. You have people moving in, so all that's a good result. And then you have a company that's underperforming. So you know that you could gain access to those companies or those potential clients or whoever it may be through a different way that currently they're getting into. So in real estate, you have what? Multifamily, you have BRRRR, you have people that do syndication. But how many people are out there going and buying property management companies, right? Like that's a different perspective. One, there's a barrier to entry because you have to have a brokerage license. Why don't you just partner with a real estate broker to gain access to off-market deals that the real estate agents and the brokers come across? Now you have a pipeline of investment properties that you have first dibs on. Then you also have the property management company that you now own, a partnership in that can manage those properties. So now you've increased your bottom line because now you don't have to outsource that work. Then if you go with like a supplementary or complementary business, like a handyman, contractor, roofing company, something like that, now you're like fully vertically integrated in the real estate space. So a lot of people are like LPs in real estate deals. You have them looking at M&A because it's more attractive, but then you also have synergistic plays where they're like, you know what, I have a hard time getting contractors, or I have a hard time with these property management companies. They don't manage my properties right. Can you manage that property management company so that, I could come in, be a partner, but then you're managing my properties? So that's kind of how they're looking at it.
Right.
It's a different strategy.
It's all, again, it comes into having a wider lens. It's like, real estate's created more millionaires than anything, right?
Yeah. 9 out of 10.
9 out of 10, right? And the market with the highest income earners outside of real estate, I believe, is insurance, financial services, technically.
Yep.
Like when you look at the raw data, it's a very large macro. Real estate, sure, but what part of real estate now is the question, right? And also to your point, one thing I want to touch on here is finding a unique way to add value, right? Putting in capital doesn't have to be the way you add value. So for you, Jesse, and your partners, you're looking at ways that you can analyze an opportunity, determine there's value to deploy capital, but then figure out how you can add value. So I'd love for you to unpack actually the story you told me over the phone was of the painter, that situation. I don't know if that rings a bell, but you were breaking down, I think it's a great example of deploying capital in your type of a relationship is part of the conversation. You can be an equity owner with no involvement, or you can be very involved, but finding a way to apply your skill sets to directly improve the quality and the profitability of the business is different than some people just saying, I want to put money somewhere because it's better than a checking account, right? In that instance, walk me through a little bit of like how that scenario plays out, from what the conversation looks like on the buy side before you even acquire the deal. Are you bringing, hey, I found something and I think it's might be worth your look? What does that look like when you're shaping that early conversation into the LOI?
Yeah, so that company is really interesting. We're buying it, so we have it under LOI. Basically, when people look at painting companies, there's a problem, right? It's a fragmented industry. You have painters that are running their business out of their van. The people that paint, they're not like the smartest tool in the shed. So you have people that, they run a business, it's in demand, like you have interior and exterior painting. But you also come across, work that needs to be done, like on the plaster side. So that requires like a GC license. We came across a painting company that had a GC license, but also had a painting license. This guy never painted a house in his life. Instead, he had an MBA, and he saw his dad's construction company and then refined all the processes. So he integrated like this 5-step marketing process where the people, the estimators, go out with an iPad, take pictures of it, the software zooms into it, documents it, lists it, and then he had a structure that was refined where you charge the homeowner to come out to do like the estimate bid. Then you have like, some of the work that's being bid out. Then you have, the closing costs or whatever of all the work. So every step of this is documented in like an automated way. And then you also have all the income that's coming in. So there's no like backlog of all this money that's owed to this painting company. So it's an efficient process. And then he had it to where he didn't even have to go to the houses himself. So a lot of time you have problems with businesses, like small businesses. I think it's like 4 or 5% of small businesses never make it to $1 million, which is sad. So you have this guy that designed the business from basically built to sell, like based off of the book, to where he made it to where he could work at home. He could have all the software, automate the process, has employees, has management. So looking at the business, I thought it was really interesting. From a management perspective, it was built very well. It doesn't necessarily make a ton of money. So it was like a $400,000 business that we're going to come in and put $45K down plus closing costs to buy this business. It makes about $200,000 net. But the thing that was valuable in this business wasn't just like the painting side. It was this whole systems marketing approach, like all the efficiencies within the operations that we could sell or build some type of software around it to where we could sell it to other painting companies. So that's an additional revenue stream that we're going to do. We could also do it as a franchise model. So now we have these painting companies we sell as a franchise for like 20 to 30,000. Then we looked at it. You could use this software not just for painting, but for general contracting. So it was like 4 to 5 different ways that we could build around this business to where we could take it to a $10 million company. So that's currently what we're working on.
Smart.
Yeah, and still something really interesting about this company is the guy built so much value in the business that he is the highest ticket like competitor to other painting companies. So when they do bids, they come in with the highest price. And then the way that he marketed this is so like Laguna Niguel, like really high income neighborhoods that have that money. That's all they market to. So they don't market to lower income neighborhoods. Right. So because he's done this, his margins have increased. So now he could get away with, paying his employees more. He could get away with, higher margins, even as building material costs and things like that go up. He's good because he's
customer acquisition cost is so much lower, probably.
Yeah. And so he's built this reputation of doing really good work. And then with the GC license, we could expand it. He currently doesn't do interior. He doesn't do any type of contracting. He just basically does all exterior. He doesn't do multifamily, HOAs.
Yep.
He does all residential. He doesn't do any commercial. We could do commercial painting. Like the expansion is insane. So that's the way I looked at the deal. Is like, how can I take this business from where it's currently making 200K net to, roughly between 1 to 3 million net.
Right. How can you 10x the company? Right. Exactly.
Well, 100x on the equity side. Yeah.
True. Yeah. Very true. So how do you
You're not going
find
to get that in real estate at all.
Right. Well, it comes down to where is there actually room to add value. Everybody says it's a value add deal, but it's like if you have a $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 property, like to make it a $2 million property, you have to put in so much money, right?
You can in the neighborhood. Like you can't turn a $500,000 house into a $2 million house and like a $600,000 neighborhood. You need the other properties to be going for $1 million, 2 million.
Right. They have to,
where I live,
you need the comps to justify even you can get it up, but I'm with you on that. So I want to understand a little more about how do you find that deal, right? Because to run it back, right? Painting company, individual in your network, uncover the software play. So it's not like that's public where people are advertising it. How do you find that deal? Is that just you boots on the ground working your ass off, Jesse, with your network of finding deals and having your hands in the right places? Or is there another way?
So we do about 80% on market and 20% off market. The on market deals, you can find them. They're like on Biz Buy Sell. There's, probably 30 to 50 different business brokers out there. The ones that we look for to work with are actually M&A advisors, not just business brokers. So the difference is the M&A advisor will do the valuations on the company. You're going to pay slightly more money for those companies, but the marketing materials is what kind of adds value. So where you could analyze, is this company worth my time? Because it's built in there. They have all the, where the growth strategy is, how it's done historically for the last 5 years. Breakdown of management, it's all in a sim. Or offering memorandum. So we look at those deals. The way that I get off market deals is through content and relationships. So I'll talk to
where do you put the content? LinkedIn heavy?
No, Facebook, LinkedIn. And then I have like a few different ways. You could even do like Craigslist. You could do, all these different channels of there's angel.co that I'm on that's like an incubator site for startups. We put in there, we're looking to buy established businesses in there. And then I also go into groups. So like Facebook groups, you might have like a venture capital group, or you might have kind of like a small business group in there. And then I'm also in the credit groups too. So that's kind of my niche. Smart. I don't give away all my tricks, but
no, but here's what I want to get to is for those listening, like, this shit doesn't walk into your inbox, right? You probably spend time in communities responding to
about 9 months. Yeah.
What?
9 months. It takes about 6 to 9 months to organically put enough content out there to where when somebody does come across you, they're like, oh, that guy's interesting. I want to talk to him.
Right. And also we know it's not a phase.
Yeah.
That's a huge thing that companies and people don't think about is like anybody can do anything for a year. Right. Like,
yeah,
you can post, I can post about cooking for a year and get by, right? Sustaining that content. And you have to show people that you're not just interested, you're a practitioner.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. You got to become an expert at something very good and zoned in on it for people to consider you credible in it. So I don't know if you've seen this, there's a lot of like on the Facebook side, there's a lot of coaches and consultants and things like that. Or, oh, we'll take your agent to like 100,000 in 2 months or whatever. They promise you the world. They overpromise and underdeliver. Yeah. So we do the opposite. Like what we're focused on is building the relationship. We'll promise you like a little slight return, but more than likely you're going to end up making 10x on an M&A deal.
Right. It's let's get the process down of working well together.
Yeah, exactly.
100%.
Being in it for the long run. Like when you're looking at analyzing companies, to buy a business, or even if you're in business, you have to play the long game. You can't look at it, like you said, 1 year. I know that there's like software people that sell like SaaS sales agents and stuff like that. You constantly see them going from one SaaS company to the next or to a fintech company. They're picking up all that experience, but then they're losing all their credibility, like behind them, their personal branding. I think COVID, right before COVID, personal branding was getting huge. Like it's almost better to be a personal brand than to be a company.
No, it's actually I literally, if you look at my LinkedIn today, I
Yeah.
literally posted exactly that, because it's like your people, like the company needs to give the people the platform and the ability to communicate. But companies, I'm sure you've heard the saying, like logos are empty vessels that talent fill with value. Right? Logos mean literally nothing. Your people, like, a company doesn't have expertise. The people at the company have expertise. So not to interrupt you on that, but 100% agree. And especially to your point, if you're operating from a standpoint of, I'm going to help you invest and deploy capital, preserve it potentially, right? Because if it sits in the checking account, it's going to get spent, right?
Yeah.
You got to find a way to creatively deploy the capital. And sometimes it takes, hey, let's do a small deal together, low risk, net positive. And if we like working together, then we grow. And if we don't,
They can even do it on credit. They don't even need the cash.
Right.
You go out, get a Chase business card. You go out, it's like $500 to create an LLC. Then you go out, you get a business bank account. Then you go to that bank and you put maybe a couple grand in it, and you go apply for a credit card. Boom, there you go. You have like 2-3 business credit cards. You have enough down payment from that business to buy another business.
Right.
And then you could be even a cleaner, for example. I talked to somebody that goes around and cleans houses, or like the Airbnb host. You could be an Airbnb host and end up buying like a $1 million janitor company. And then you'll never have to work a day in your life. You're just going to own that company that goes and cleans commercial properties and things like that. So it's, they're out there.
It's creativity. I got to introduce you to a couple people. One, I think could be of some value. I mean, but it just comes down to, there's a lot of ways to win the game, and looking at time and kind of closing. There's a lot of ways to play the game. And if you determine that game is money, fine. If you determine that the game is business, fine. However,
freedom.
Bingo. It comes down to, are you able to make decisions and operate with confidence and satisfaction without the limitations of what are the rules? Right? In your game, it's meet great people that do business the same way you do, that share values, that understand how you do what you do. So part of it's finding the right fit, right? Business is like dating. Are we a good fit? Because you can date anybody, right? Jesse, with that, look, there's a lot we can get into. That was a fast hour. I feel like that hummed by. Is there anything that you wanted to touch on? We touched a little bit on the mental health, self-awareness side and growth. We talked a bit about private equity, your style of M&A and relationship building, as well as looking at the market and building relationships. Like, is there anything that you wanted to talk about on this conversation that maybe we didn't get to, or we didn't go deep enough?
Yeah. So on the M&A side, I think a lot of people look at buying a business as risky, right? We had COVID that came through, wiped out restaurants. People got laid off. And there's this whole like digital revolution that's going on where businesses are no longer just brick and mortar, that they're moving towards more like software type businesses or technology companies, to where that everything's online. You have e-commerce companies that are being promoted left and right. But what people don't realize is at the end of the day, those businesses still exist. So there's a lot of money that could be made in brick and mortar companies like HVAC, really specialty stuff that's why I like construction, is because there's always going to be homes that need to be renovated. There's always maintenance that needs to be done. That trade is not going to be replaced by a robot, anytime soon. No. So I think when people look at, their investment vehicle that you're talking about, that there's a lot more different opportunities out there to pick the right investment vehicle. And it's not like it's a one path direction that they're going to take. A lot of people diversify their investments. I might be in stocks, bonds, ETFs, things like that. And then you have actual private equity that you could be in a fund that's getting that return, or like syndication for real estate. But the highest returns you're going to get are probably in M&A. And it's because other people aren't willing to do the job that I do. Like I come across investors all the time. They're like, oh man, I want to own 100% of that company, but I'm not willing to take the license test, right? Like, you got to get a general contracting license. If you're going to buy a property management company, you have to become a real estate agent, then work for a broker, then become a broker. So a lot of people don't want to do the work, but the work is where you create the value. So what you bring to each deal, besides that capital, is going to determine what your exit's going to be. Because I'm willing to go in and actually do the work on every single deal that we look at, I build value just by myself. But then imagine if you come in with, say, a team of 5 people on a business, like somebody that's already grown a company to 20 to $50 million in sales. You know for a fact that you're going to grow that company. It's not as risky. And then a lot of times there's creative financing. So when a lot of people will come to me, they're like, oh man, I don't have enough money to get in this deal, or this is like my last 100,000. Well, I tell them, you could put 50,000 in, get another partner. And then what we'll do is we'll have the owner stay for like a year, 2 years, 3 years to manage that business for you. And we'll do some type of seller financing, earn out or clawback. So in case that company dips, you're not responsible for that remaining portion of the capital. And a lot of times it's the creative structures and the kind of the skill sets that we bring to M&A deals. I think that there's a lot of baby boomers retiring, and you're going to see a lot of wealth transfer hands in the next couple of years. And the people that are going to make it to like multimillionaires, people that end up employing like thousands of people, they're going to be first-time entrepreneurs. They're going to be people that have never been in that situation, that had the courage, and then what do they call it? Chutzpah or something like that.
Chutzpah.
Chutzpah. Yeah, they're going to have chutzpah. And I was talking to my girlfriend about this, that's probably the main thing that separates me from other people is the chutzpah. So.
You got to have the ability to put some skin in the game and roll the dice, Jesse, I appreciate you sharing some time. When we caught, there's a couple, if you have to jump, that's fine. I got one question for you offline. But look, I appreciate you plugging in for a little bit. Look, a lot of good stuff. Where can people find you? Obviously LinkedIn sounds like that's where LinkedIn and Facebook. Yep. Give a little bit of a plug and just where people can go stay plugged into you. Yeah,
LinkedIn, Jesse Mauck. You could also look for my website. So Zigr, Zigr.io. Reason we did .io is because it's the tech space. You could also find me on Facebook, JM Mauck. So yeah, that's how you can find me. I'm getting on YouTube, but I'm too busy working in these businesses right now.
It's all good stuff. Look, a lot of gold, and I appreciate you sharing some time. Everybody else, thank you for stopping by. If you've been sticking around the video side, appreciate it. Audio wise, enjoy, and we'll be back for more. Hey everybody, my name is Jeremy Francesi. I'm the founder and president of Strategic Branding Studios, and I want to say thanks so much for stopping by and tuning into the video. If you enjoyed the content, remember to like, comment, and subscribe so you can stay tuned and stay informed on all new releases. If you're interested in learning about how SBS can help you and your organization take marketing and communications to the next level, visit us at strategicbrandingstudios.com for more.